Okay, hello everyone. This is a tutorial for the Dark Side deck, Once the Sunstar is Mine, from the Beezer Bowl 2025 Special Expansion set. And if you don't know what I'm talking about, I'll put a link in the video description so you can see what that's all about. So on the Beezer Bowl 2025 Slack channel, you have access to this PDF of all the cards from the expansion set, as well as this primer that we put together on this Dark Side deck, and a couple stock deck lists for the Dark Side deck, and all the same resources for the Light Side deck as well. Leave it to Beezer. But this one's just about the Dark Side deck. And so we're just going to quickly talk through what this deck is all about and what it's doing. So let's go down here to the objective. Once the Sunstar is mine. So you're going to deploy Bright Tree Village with Sunstar there, and Zarek's Hideout with Zarek there. We'll look at those in a second. For the remainder of the game, Honor of the Jedi is cancelled. This deck's going to be doing a lot of ping damage if it is working as intended, and so you don't have to worry about Honor. And you may not deploy Dark Jedi. The whole theme of this deck is this kind of evil Ewok Master Zarek trying to train an innocent young Ewok Teebo to be his Dark Apprentice. And so Dark Jedi are not really in the picture here, it's just Ewok sorcery. Non-alien characters on Endor, power and forfeit -1. So it's an Endor deck. You can play other characters, no severe character restrictions, but they're going to be weakened on Endor. Sorcery test draws are +1 for each sorcerer on table, and unless opponent occupies Bright Tree Village, generates no force there. Alright, so now let's look at those starting cards. So Zarek's Hideout right here, with Zarek there. This location is going to pull your sorcery tests, so it works equivalently in that way to the Dagobah system if you're playing Jedi testing for Light Side. This is the location that uploads your sorcery tests. Non-Ewok characters at the hideout are lost, and so while Zarek and perhaps Teebo are there, you are safe from spy beatdowns. And it's a 2-0. Bright Tree Village. This is a 2-2, but as the objective said, opponent does not generate force there unless they occupy. So your starting activation ratio is going to be 4-0. And then the really interesting thing about this site, you can see on the Dark Side text, unless opponent controls, flip this site if sorcery test number 3 completed. So we'll get to test number 3 in due time, but this is a flippable site that when you complete test number 3, flips to Dark Tree Village here. You can see it's the same location, but all burned up, set on fire. And Light Side can flip it back if they control. And so a pretty interesting mechanic there. The other starting cards are Master Zarek, so here he is. When he's the mentor, opponent may not target apprentice with weapons or interrupts, so he's going to protect Teebo if you choose Teebo to be your apprentice, which probably is what you want to do. And he limits opponent to 1 battle destiny here. So he's trying to keep things under control while the sorcery testing is going on. You know, unlike Dagobah, this is Endor, so opponent can battle into you, especially once they move away from Zarek's Hideout, which they'll have to do to start completing tests beyond the first one. So you'll need to protect them, but he has some protection inherently going on there. And these cards he can upload, the Hang Glider or Zarek's Medallion, also offer some protection from opponent battling into you. Only other thing to point out, he's got in his lore this keyword Sorcerer and Dark Arts. So that's relevant for several other cards. For example, on the objective, you remember your sorcery training draws are +1 for each sorcerer on table. The final starting card, Sunstar, deploys on Bright Tree Village. So in the Ewoks TV show that all of this is based on, everyone was trying to steal the Sunstar from the Ewoks all the time. And so once sorcery test number 3 is completed, the idea is they've accomplished that. So the effect is relocated from Bright Tree Village to the spellcaster, which we'll get into, and then really buffs the spellcaster. Alright, so those are the starting cards. Let's look at the rest of the text on this objective. While this side up, once during each of your control phases, may upload Macrit, T-Bro, or a Sorcerer, and once during each of your deploy phases, may download a Mount Thunderstone site. Whenever you draw Sorcery Training Destiny, draw 2 and choose 1. Very similar to Mind What You Have Learned. So we're not going to look at all of these, but let's just quickly look at the Mount Thunderstone sites. So we've got one right here, Mount Thunderstone Castle. So this has the exterior icon, planet icon, and a new location icon. This is mountain icon, so there are some cards that deploy minus or plus to mountain site, that type of thing. So this is a mountain site. And during your move phase, Dark Arts characters may move between here and any Endor battleground site. So you remember seeing Master Zarek has Dark Arts in his lore, so he's a Dark Arts character. There are several others as well. So this functions for all of them as a warp site, pretty similar to what Vader's castle does for Vader. The other Mount Thunderstone site, where is it? The Talus here. It's another Mount Thunderstone site. Yeah, it's a 2/1. We won't dwell on that. And then the other card you can upload, we'll skip Macrit, but we want to look at Tebow for a second. So he's the guy you're probably going to be training. And the key text for him, once per game if your character present was just lost, may use Potion of Life to restore that character to the same site. Well, technically deploy for free, so you might have to pay to if Goldenrod is out. So he can save your mentor if something, if things start going sideways on a once per game basis. And opponent's non-alien characters deploy +1 here. So again, this is a very alien-themed deck, and although it's designed to be playable in the open meta and kind of fit well into that, it also is designed with the light side Beezer Bowl deck in mind, Leave It to Beezer, which has a lot of stuff going on with Ewoks. And so the intention is for these decks to be really fun to play against one another and have a lot of light Ewok versus dark Ewok action going on. Alright, so on the primer, we'll talk about the starting effects, the other starting effects later. But turn 1, Zarek uploads Zarek's medallion, you'll upload test number 1, upload Tebow in your control phase, download a Mount Thunderstone site, and you're going to deploy test 1 and get your testing started. So let's look at what happens there. Test number 1. These cards are in alphabetical order, by the way, so that's how they're organized on the PDF. So deploy on your sorcerer, that's going to be Zarok. Target a mentor and an apprentice here. Deploy Spellbook on the apprentice. We'll look at that in a second. And then attempt in your control phase, draw Destiny. If Destiny plus apprentice's power is over 10, test completed and opponent loses 1 force. So the ways that you get over 10 are the objective adds 1 to your draws for each sorcerer on table. The rules, and there'll be a small Beezer Bowl rule supplement. Your draws are +1 for each Mount Thunderstone site on table. Very similar to Jedi testing and, adding from the Dagobah sites. And then there's some other cards that add, like Master Zarek. Where is he here? Okay, no, he doesn't have that text anymore. But there's one of the effects you start adds 2 to your training draws, or there's stuff like that. You can get above 10. So, Spellbook. So as soon as you pull out sorcery test number 1, The spellbook comes from outside your deck, so just have it under your starting effect. It's going to deploy on your apprentice, Tebow, and the character gains Spellcaster as a characteristic and is immune to attrition. Completed sorcery tests are placed here as spells, and spells about to be lost from table from opponent's side are relocated here. We'll talk about that later. And then once per turn, may cast one spell from spellbook, or 2 of Sunstar on this character. So, what are we talking about? So once you complete a sorcery test, unlike in Mind What You Have Learned, where a completed Jedi test goes on the table and then it gives you some kind of global effect, the completed sorcery test is stacked on the spell book, and it becomes a spell that the spellcaster can cast. And many of them are only relevant specifically at the spellcaster's location. So for example, this one here, Teosha. To cast Teosha, during battle, target opponent's character of ability under 4 present. Target is excluded from battle for remainder of turn. So when you complete this test, goes in the spell book that the spellcaster, the apprentice, is carrying, and then once per turn, the spellcaster can cast a spell from there. And so this is a pretty interesting thing. It's, I guess, a little reminiscent of political effects, where, at least with the shield out, where you're kind of choosing which one to use each turn. In any event, you're choosing which spell to cast each turn and kind of trying to predict that. You can't just have them all the time. So that's one of the interesting and strategic things about this deck. So let's, at this point, veer into the other starting effects. So you've got Prophecy Pool. I mentioned, so this is not a mandatory starting effect, but you're probably going to want to start this. At the start of your control phase, you can choose to either add 2 to your sorcery training destinies this turn, or name a card type, reveal the bottom of your opponent's reserve deck, and if the card matches the named card type, it's lost. So kind of a least sub-Cyrillian thing going on, except targeting the bottom of the deck. So that opens up some really interesting kind of high-skill play lines where if you can track your opponent's deck, or predict what they're doing, say with Naked 3PO and putting cards back, you can really exploit that. You can also sacrifice this effect, place it out of play to add 3 to your just drawn training destiny. So if you really need to get things moving, you missed a key draw, need to get your test completed, you can sack this effect and just move on with your life, is a choice you have. Another effect you're probably going to want to start, Realm of Spirits. It also has the sacrifice text at the end, so you can choose which one to sack. Maybe you end up sacking both of them sequentially, or maybe you even need both of them on one turn if you draw really low. But if you do keep it on table, it's basically a back to tank for sorcerers. Okay, so that's test 1 in the first turn or 2. Second turn, you're going to complete test 1 in your control phase. Ideally, you complete it. Download your other Mount Thunderstone site, and then if they're not already there, you're going to want to walk Tebow and Master Zarek over to the castle. So test number 2, where is it? Oomba Doomba Boomba. Test number 2 deploys on a Mount Thunderstone site. So you could do the castle or the Talus. Castle is probably going to be preferable because it's a 2-0 versus a 2-1. And so, again, they're safe from attack there unless opponent has a spy. Also, the castle, like we looked at, is a warp site for Dark Arts characters, and that's going to be a key thing for them to be able to do, is warp from there to the location, the Bright Tree Village, where they're going to want to complete test number 3. So, deploy on Mount Thunderstone site, try to do the castle if you can. At the start of your next control phase, you attempt this test. If it's completed, opponent loses 2 force, so we're incrementing the force loss each time. You'll stack it in your spellbook, and then how you cast this one is interesting. So at the beginning of your turn, you target a battleground you control and a battleground opponent controls, and until the beginning of your next turn, players may not force drain at either location. And so this is designed as kind of a mirror to Great Warrior, where it's buying you some time to get your deck going. But unlike Great Warrior, where it's just like, okay, no drain bonuses for you, I'm just going to sit here on Dagobah doing my thing while you don't do anything. This is more of an interactive damage shutdown, where you're foregoing damage you could have done to the opponent in order to, prevent their damage. And so it kind of opens up some interesting strategic lines, especially in the context of battle plan or battle order being out, and of course, different locations having different force drain damage potential at them. And you have to be at a battleground to make use of it. So, again, unlike Dagobah and Jedi testing, although we do, keep the Apprentice and the Sorcerer safe for the first couple turns, we want this to be an interactive deck that has counterplay, and you can come attack them. And if they're just hiding at non-battlegrounds, they're not going to be able to accomplish what they're trying to accomplish with this deck. So you complete that in your control phase. Then test number 3, you will Firestorm, you'll deploy on Bright Tree Village. And then this one is attempted when the Mentor and Apprentice are present at the end of your move phase. And so this could actually be done in the same turn, theoretically, as test number 2, if you get a nice start and your training draws are good enough. If you have enough sorcerers on table to get the plus to your draws from that to pass all these tests, you could do it in the same turn. So complete test 2 at the castle, then deploy this on Bright Tree Village, and then in your move phase, warp from the castle to the Bright Tree Village to complete test 3. All of this is in the primer, so, just as a written reference. So if you complete this test, opponent loses 3 force, again incrementing by 1 each time. It'll get stacked on the spellbook, and to cast Firestorm, you double your total battle destiny here. So, pretty strong. Tebow, or whoever your apprentice is getting pretty strong at this point, learning some really powerful spells. But again, there's counterplay. Scanner Text is a very common card, preventing total battle destiny from being increased. If you draw 1 or 2, and honestly this deck is not like super great destiny, most likely, depending on how you build it, then doubling, a 1 or a 2 is kind of like, so what? But also, if you play skillfully, if you're tracking, this could be a really powerful test. So again, we wanted this to be a high skill ceiling deck, fun to play no matter what, but if you want to get really deep with the strategy, you can. The other thing that happens when you complete test number 3, you flip the Bright Tree Village because the Firestorm burns it up. And then the Sunstar, if you control Dark Tree Village, so just being at the Bright Tree Village and completing test number 3 is enough to flip the Bright Tree Village to Dark Tree Village. But then you have to control Dark Tree Village to steal the Sunstar. So if Flightside is still there contesting the site, they're fighting with you over the Sunstar, you don't get it yet. But once you control the Dark Tree Village, you steal the Sunstar, the spellcaster gets it, becomes power +2, and may cast spells at adjacent sites as if present there. So that's pretty good. Being able to cover the adjacent sites with the threat of total battle destiny. Finally, test number 4, Kiss of Death. Deploy on Dark Tree Village if Morag alone at an Endor site. So probably what you're going to do is you're going to deploy Morag to the Mount Thunderstone Castle for 5 force. Then you'll deploy test number 4. You can before that you can get her Shadowstone staff if you want. And then in your move phase, she's going to use the castle to warp to the Dark Tree Village because she has to be present with the apprentice. And so thematically, this is recreating a storyline from Ewoks where Morag tries to steal the Sunstar. Um, and so Teebo and Morag are going to fight over the Sunstar. It's a pretty simple duel. You just compare power totals, and the character with the higher power total gets the spellbook and the Sunstar, the other is placed out of play. So who's going to win this duel? Okay, Morag is power 4. Teebo is power 2. He's power +1 for each light side icon at the same Endor site. So at the Dark Tree Village, which is a 3/3 site, he's going to be power 5. The Sunstar makes him power +2, and he'll most likely have it at this point. So power 7. So does he auto win the duel? Well, if you don't do anything else, yes. However, there's this card, Thunderstruck. Target a character present with your sorcerer. Used function, targets power and forfeit -1 for remainder of turn. Lost function, target's power and forfeit values may not be increased. So if you would like Morag to be your spellcaster for the rest of the game and kind of take on that role, then run a few of these, find one before you do test 4, play it lost to target Teebo, and all of those power buffs that we just talked about will be suspended for the turn. He'll be back down to his base power of 2. Morag will win the duel. Once you complete test number 4, your objective is going to flip. Where is it? So flip this card of sorcery, test number 4 completed. And now some really interesting things start happening. So first of all, Hoodrix is cancelled. During your control phase, you get this occupation type ping or WAP type ping for each battleground site your sorcerer occupies or controls. And then, once per turn, may relocate a sorcery test stacked on spellbook that has not been cast this turn to an opponent's character, vehicle, or weapon at any location. Target is cursed, i.e. game text is cancelled. The opponent may lose 2 force to break the curse, and then the sorcery test goes back to spellbook. So, this is pretty strong, right? This is kind of there are many hunting you now, reminiscent of that type of mechanic, where opponent loses 1 or eats the game text cancellation for remainder of turn. Obviously stronger because this game text cancellation persists until it's cancelled, but note something here. You can only stack a sorcery test as a curse if it hasn't been cast this turn. And then once it is cast, once it's stacked as a curse, it's not on the spellbook anymore, so you cannot cast it as a spell. So if you choose to use your sorcery test to cancel something's game text, then okay, good for you, but you don't have it anymore to cast as a spell, which could be pretty significant. And so this is another component of the deck where you have a lot of strategic considerations about trade-offs and a lot of different ways you could play the deck. Lots of decisions to make, which again, you can be chill, casual, have fun, or you can really get deep with this stuff. And then, so you may be thinking, wow, this seems really strong. And it is really strong, but this deck also can be completely cut off at the knees. So what does it say here? Place out of play and lose 5 force if spellcaster leaves table or opponent controls Bright Tree Village. So if the opponent kills a specific character, the spellcaster, or controls a specific location, your deck gets toasted. Your objective is gone, you lose 5 force. And so Um, this is worse than this is worse than scum, and opponent controlling the audience chamber, where you have a really specific loss condition. Um, I mean, technically maybe you could still pull it out, but it's gonna be a lot harder. Um, so if opponent controls Bright Tree Village, then technically you still have all your spells. You can still cast them, but no more ping damage and no more cursing. So those will be a problem. And if you lose the spellcaster, spell book is lost as well, and all the spells, and you'll really be in bad shape then. So the deck has a lot of ways it can come at you with threats. The direct damage, encouraging you to interact. The cancellation of Hujix, encouraging you to really come strong and not just kind of do a wide deployment and say, okay, I'm going to, just Hujix out of this battle and then drain you at 8 at these other sites. Um, and so, yeah, that is basically the deck. There are other cards in this set. We're not going to go through all of them. You can read them and pop any questions in the Beezer Bowl 2025 Slack channel, or I am one of us. But this has been an overview of how the deck works. Hope it was informative. Thanks.